Hello, and welcome back to SQL in the City Streamed. We are Redgate's evangelist team, and we're going to talk to you today about database disasters. Because I think actually as a group we may know more about that than really we actually should. So quick introduction, who we are.
My name is Grant Fritchey.
My name is Kendra Little.
I'm Kathi Kellenberger.
And I'm Steve Jones.
And what we did is we recently had a contest where we asked you to tell us about the database projects that you've been involved in one way or another, maybe just as a witness, where the database wasn't really thought of so deeply in the process and disaster ensued. So what we did is we had an inspiring story, I think, told by Grant Fritchey. So I thought it would be fun to kick off today by asking Grant to tell you about his own database disaster.
Okay, well, all right. So the short version, because I could spend the next, we have 3 hours, right?
3.5.
3.5. I could do all 3.5, but okay, no, we're not going to.
We don't actually have 3 hours.
I'm going to give you the 3-minute version. All right, so first up, my fault, right? This is all my fault. And so let's just take that right up front. I'm the one who caused this problem. What happened was that the DBA team had been kind of less than kind to our dev teams. And so when the dev teams finally had a chance, they went around us completely and utterly in every possible way. And they brought in a consultant who was like, yeah, DBAs are horrible. And they built out a whole system using in Hibernate and all this stuff, and they completely and utterly bypassed the DBA team. I'll tell you a phrase that they used a little later because it's in one of the slides. But they completely and utterly bypassed the DBA team, and this project just got worse and worse and worse and worse until it took years to complete. Went way over budget, way over time, and had lots and lots and lots of problems. And it was really, really bad, and all because there were no DBAs involved. And that was completely my fault because I was one of the meanest of the DBAs.
Would you say that you were scary?
Yeah, I was probably a little scary.
That was the origin story.
That is how the scary DBA came to pass.
Well, that's earlier than that. But anyway, that's yeah.
Did the database ever recover from this disaster?
No.
No, it actually never recovered.
No, they managed to get it out the door finally. It was released, but they had to then build 2 other databases one that they used for data migrations and one that they used for reporting, because they could not run a single report query against the main database because it was so badly put together that it was
emotional support database.
Yeah, emotional support database. It was just everything but a failed project. The project didn't fail, but it was just a nightmare.
It flopped.
It should have failed. I mean, it should have failed bad. They should have just shot it in the head. But
but instead it got emotional support databases and kind of managed its way into production.
Yeah, it had a corgi database that made it happy.
Oh, that's adorable. Well, Grant is not the only one who has been part of or observed a database disaster. We got a bunch of entries, and so we've got a few winners, and we're going to share these winners today. So when you win a contest about database disasters, you may not want your name and LinkedIn profile published on the internet, right? So we have anonymized our winners, and we will be telling you stories from our winners in a respectful and anonymous way. So one of my favorite of these stories was the story of the database as a box. So this is a story, and my favorite quote from this was, in this project, SQL Server was just a place to put the data. It had no other function.
My team called it the information storage layer. And we kept saying the what? The information storage layer. What's an information storage layer? Well, it's in SQL Server. You mean a database? No. It's an information storage layer.
It's a cardboard box where you put your data.
Because if you don't call it a database, then the DBAs don't get involved.
So this is actually not an unusual pattern. Not everybody sees it this way, but it does happen where application developers just view the database as, I've heard the word repository, or just sort of a collection of flat files.
Yes. Yeah.
And DBAs see it as this rich collection of features. So my question to everyone on the panel is, what techniques have you found that help bridge this gap, that help bring these two sides together, which people can use?
Can we fire the developers?
That I'm open to all techniques. You may or may not have the power to fire the developers, but if you can, that's an option.
So that's being mean, and that's not a good solution. Trust me on that. That's down that path. That's the dark side.
So what are the alternatives to being scary?
Yeah, don't be scary. The alternatives, largely it's service-based leadership. Help them, guide them through service, through helping them out, doing things for them, going, yes, let's do that, but let's do it this way, instead of saying no. I mean, it really is largely about saying yes, but.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Any other ideas?
One place that I worked for a time is I had a series of classes with the developers, and I actually taught them about looking at statistics IO and looking at execution plans and some query techniques, and that was really helpful.
Okay, so like teaching them about the features of optimization and performance, kind of that does make it seem like more than a cardboard box.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I've done what Grant has done in that they write a query or they set something up that doesn't work well, and of course we notice it doesn't work well, but then give them something that does work, so you kind of just do the effort for them and say, hey, whatever you did, use this instead in your code and it'll fix the problem. And so I've actually had luck with doing things like implementing stored procedures that when you find something that isn't running well, you say, listen, call this instead of having your embedded SQL or your dynamic SQL or whatever else, and let me worry about how it works. Right? And it just returns what you need returned.
Right, so using a mixed model, which is becoming easier and easier with some of these automatic code generator apps. It's becoming easier to kind of have a mixed model of, we'll generate a lot of the code, but not all the code.
Not all.
Right?
Yeah.
All the code. Well, speaking of this, we've got an honorable mention that is all about entity framework. And Kathy's going to share with us, what does EF mean? What does it mean?
What does it mean? Oh, well, that entity framework is so amazing because you don't have to really worry about designing your database or actually writing any queries because it's going to do it for you, and it's so easy and fast, ? So I have had some experience. So not only did our contestant tell us the story, it sounded kind of similar to some things that I've run into. And I'm not saying that entity framework is bad, but there are some best practices. And sometimes if you're going really, really fast, you don't take the time to look at those best practices. And I know in this situation, I don't believe that there were primary keys, foreign keys. And when they did their testing, I'm not sure if they did load testing, but if they did their testing, it was probably against just a really tiny sample of data. And everything looked great. And they even deployed it and seemed great for a little while, but this was a really large business critical application. So it didn't take long before all of these problems started to surface. So and I guess, I'm not even sure if it was a man, but whoever it was, they ended up coming in and straightening things out. It was a good ending to the story that they were able to help out and make it good. So I think really, one thing is don't go too fast that you're skipping some important steps, and look at best practices when you're using a tool.
Yeah.
So
how do we determine how fast how do we know how much load and performance testing we should do? How fast should we go when developing something to ship a product? Do you have advice to folks about this?
Well, I mean, I'd start with the SLA. I mean, there's got to be a service level agreement, some definition of performance that's adequate. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be fast as possible, but there's got to be, this is adequate.
Right. So even if you're not initially setting these with your customers, you want to set one that you know internally, right?
Sure.
And see if you can live up to that, because if you can't,
Right.
then that's a big piece of information that you're not able to do
Yeah,
what
I mean,
you thought.
it could be really simple. I mean, you could start really simple. Every query runs faster than 3 seconds. Now, I know there's apps out there that you're going 3 seconds. I'm like, shoot me now. But you know, you have to have a number, right? I mean, there has to be a starting point. And so, let's say everything has to run faster than 1 second, or whatever your number is. Find that number and establish that. And then, if you go over or when you go over, deal with that problem then.
Right.
You know, but yeah, you've got to pick a number to start.
Right.
Has to be.
Yeah.
By fast, do you mean pace of release or
Right.
amount
How
of code
fast
written?
should I develop and ship features to market?
Oh, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your answer, I think, actually also applied, though, is
Right.
that if I'm going to ship something to market, I need to have a service level agreement.
I think it depends on how, well, two things, right? One is what features am I shipping, right? Because there are features that don't really impact performance, right? We may do a lot of work with singleton type stuff in the database as opposed to aggregates. And so in those cases, it may be less important to do regular load testing or performance testing, because often that is, it's a big exercise, right? You have to provision resources, right? You have to have workload generators. I mean, even things like distributed relay, it's not trivial to spin up a significant load with those. And
No, it's still work.
yeah, put a lot of clients or something, right? I think some of this will get better over time with things like containers, but if the features aren't as impactful, maybe we do more development before we stop and do some performance testing. But I think the big metric for me is how much does this matter, right? Or really, you know, how much will it make this ring? Because
In a bad way or a good way? Is it ringing with sales or is it ringing
there's
with
no such
complaints?
good, there's no such thing as good.
As a DBA, this thing doesn't go off.
Well,
It's
even as a
for
developer,
good.
right? Like, the more this rings, the more that we need to do performance testing, right?
Yeah.
Like anything that becomes business critical, and even when we've talked to clients about this, it's, you know, if it's not as impactful an application, maybe you can get by with a quarter of your production data load, right, or 100 megabytes, or whatever number you pick.
Sure.
But if this is really critical, then we probably want to test on like 2 times production data, because we're not getting less data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's, you know, like, hey, wow, our databases are just smaller and faster
sure.
every day.
Yeah.
Said no one
Never
ever.
happened.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, you've got to support minimum viable product. You really do. You have to.
Okay.
You
So when I'm
do have to
initially
say-
releasing, I want to say go small feature set?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're getting the whole DevOps concept of, lots and lots and lots of small releases, sure. But I mean, it's still about the idea of like, I want dev to go as fast as humanly possible and as safe as humanly possible, right? We still have to protect the production environment, whether that's a performance thing, and EFs without primary keys or foreign keys. And oh my God, yeah, I've been there. But that's not the EF's fault. That's just bad code again.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to hit that minimum viable product and then just increment your way out of it. But still, there's it does go back kind of the SLA.
Yeah. So I would like to say that a lot of what Grant just said is actually, we have a message right now in the bathrooms at Redgate. So they do this cool thing in the Redgate office. It's called Learn on the Loo. And they print out these papers with just interesting concepts you can learn. So you can look at it while you're sitting on the loo. And right now, there's a summary of the book Accelerate, which is by Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Gene Kim, and Jez Humble. And it talks about how stability metrics are just as important as release speed metrics, and we have to consider both of them and balance them the same way. So I just love the thought that we're just thinking about this on the loo at Redgate.
Yeah, if somebody wants to actually cut the first part of Kendra's sentence into a little animated GIF, I will buy you a drink. Because the fact that there is a message in the bathroom at Redgate is fantastic.
DevOps, we think about it literally all the time.
All the time.
So we've talked about the 2 honorable mentions in our disasters contest. We also have some runners-up, and Steve is going to tell you about one runner-up, the racing team.
Yeah, so I thought this was an interesting story in this race team, that somebody had built a DevOps team, right? So they have development and they have operations things. Then they built this DevOps team where they said that this team hit the ground running, and their job was to kind of build up this development environment with the click of a button, which is something I think we would all love to do, to just click a button and have stuff work. So the story is that they go to work, and 6 months later, they've done all this work. So there's networking, there's infrastructure, and there's 13 servers, right? Which in volleyball would be this, 13 servers. This way, I guess, 13 servers. And that doesn't sound like a lot for 6 months work. I mean, I don't know everybody else feels, but I'd like to think I could get 13 servers built today or tomorrow or this week at least. And then 9 months into this process, what they find out is that they need databases in addition to the few SQL servers and the 13 servers they built. And so they're saying the DBAs are now at fault, right? The DBAs are now blocking the DevOps process because they haven't been involved. I think similar to Grant's story where they weren't asked to be involved for some reason. And so there's a data refresh process needed on these development environments, and the DBAs all of a sudden have to get it working, right? The developers can't get their minimum viable product out. So they had all this time to do it, and then all of a sudden the DBAs just have a few days to build their refresh process for the SQL Server databases, which unfortunately is a story I think many people have been in as well. So that's a tough area to be in, that somebody has actually invested all this time without asking for help, right? So they've kind of violated this team concept. It's really a special ops group, and they're saying now we've got to go, and so that's a tough place to be as a DBA. So see, Kendra has a question here. So how do we get DBAs to integrate with the dev process?
Right. Especially if the relationship's like that and they aren't even asking you at the beginning, what do you do to try to help build that together? How do you respond?
Yeah, so for me, I think that what has worked really well in my career is to carefully stick my nose in other people's business. I think I do that at Redgate a little bit too, that I lurk in Slack channels and I communicate with teams, and I in a way where I'm trying to help them and express an opinion or trying to understand what they're doing, to see if I can add something, bring some value myself. And so I've had luck in going to find developers or going to find, I used to work in a company where we actually had an engineering ops and a production ops group. And so engineering ops would come up with brilliant ideas for like how to do infrastructure. And they were great theories, and they didn't always get the rubber on the road. So it was useful to just go over there and talk to them about what they're thinking and go, all right, that's a good idea, but maybe this would be helpful, or have you thought about this? And so kind of think gently sticking your nose in somebody's business is helpful.
I like it.
I do it with my kids too sometimes. Are you thinking about something appropriately?
How about you guys? Any other tips?
Don't be Grant.
Don't be Grant, period, full stop. No.
Don't be a pirate?
Don't be the old Grant.
Don't
be the new Grant.
Don't be the mean Grant.
Be the new
Be a
Grant.
pirate, but a friendly pirate.
Yeah, you got to be a friendly pirate.
Right.
I mean, it really is about, the key is recognizing you're on a team. And it has to be about teamwork. It has to be about the concept that no one's better than anyone, and no one's leading the partnership. It's a partnership.
Right.
And we bring things to the table, they bring things to the table. They're doing great, amazing, cool work, but they could use a little help over here. We're doing great, amazing, cool work, but we could use some help over here.
Yep.
And and it's just down to communication. I mean, just because if you're not talking to one another, then it just all goes south. I mean, and you've got to have more than good intentions. You have to have good actions.
Right.
It's sure. I'm sure that you're protecting your production systems when you stand on the bridge like Gandalf and scream, "None shall pass." Yeah, I mean, it's true. You're protecting those production systems, but you're not helping.
Yeah.
Well,
especially when you're in kind of a difficult situation, it can be hard to put your anger aside. But my biggest tip for doing it is to just go be physically present.
Yeah.
Even if it's inconvenient. There's a reason that all us evangelists come to Cambridge multiple times a year. It's not that short a trip, but it's really important. And when you're physically in the room with people, you see each other more as human beings and less as problems.
Yeah.
And you're also much more likely to kind of change your patterns and be like, oh, hey, do you have an idea about this problem I'm working on?
Right.
Because that person is physically there with you.
Although in the modern age, and especially in the modern development, you've got the DBA team is in India, the development team is in spread across Eastern and Central Europe, the support teams in the U.S. and the designers are here in the U.K. You're not getting in the same room.
If you can't get in the same room, use a webcam. I know that you may not feel like you're the prettiest pirate in the world. Grant is the prettiest pirate in the world, right? We know that. But it at least helps you be more human to one another whenever you can.
But yeah, it is really about engaging. I mean, because it's down to communication and engagement. It's going to make that possible.
I have one little thing to add.
Go for it.
I think just realizing the egos in IT and development, we all have gigantic egos, and realizing that about ourselves, and then just, I think if you understand that, then maybe you're going to communicate a little better. If you understand where that person's coming from, and you're like, oh yeah, I've got that problem too. So I think that's a little comment there.
Someone's got to put their ego aside first, so you get bonus points if it's you. I mean, bonus points don't count in life, but
But there's still points, right?
There's still points. There's still points.
Yeah.
So another runner-up, and this one, I love this one because it was like, hey, let's do all the hard things, right? I mean, one thing, anybody can move to the cloud. Let's implement DevOps too. And so, but we're just going to move to the cloud and check the code. Well, it's all on SQL Server 2008. Is that running on the cloud right now? I'm not sure. We're just going to go. And no, funny enough, it wasn't running on the cloud because they're going to Azure SQL Database, which is on vNext, not on whatever is released even. So funny enough, they released the app and the code after only validating it locally. And then the customers are going, things aren't working, and the queries are running for 45 minutes, and,
It couldn't have been the application's fault, though. There is no way that it was the app's fault, right?
Oh, no, it couldn't have been the app, and it couldn't have been the database. It had to be the network, right?
It was the network.
We always blame the network.
Absolutely.
And so finally, the person involved in this one got together and explained to them everything that was going wrong, and they had to spend long days rewriting code and re-architecting the structures because they were probably badly put together in 2008, but did not survive that just toss it over the wall approach to moving it to the cloud.
Yeah. So a couple questions out of this one. In this case, it seems like it was about influencing leadership, not necessarily about influencing a dev team, right? So this is a little bit tricky in terms of what are different techniques that may apply if you see this large project where it seems like the design may be wrong from the top. Are there ways to influence this, or do you just have to wait for it to fail?
Boy, in this case, I think if you're guessing that I need to show that there's a potential problem here, what I would actually do is support as much as possible, but then provide a large data set periodically to say, let's just check that this works and get some idea of how bad things might be. Just so that you could warn somebody to go, hey, maybe we need to think about a few other things, or just buy more hardware. Like ultimately, I think in this case, it was a larger company, and so maybe they want to go, we'll just spend, 8 times as much on hardware and deal with it, right? Which is a valid solution.
But they were going to the cloud, so they would have had to just go to a higher service tier. But
essentially, right?
Idea,
they're just buying. I mean, today it would be vCores, right, or something. I'm just going to buy more.
Right. Insert the credit card.
Yeah, the GS95 or whatever crazy moniker they have for the big item there.
Well, I've said it before. I mean, you've got 2 choices when you're doing tuning, right? Throw money at the problem, or change things. I mean, those are your choices. So.
Right, absolutely.
But
you do need a data set. You need some load to throw at it so you know where to insert the money, right? So in SQL Server, we need to throw some load at it and do some monitoring so we can see, okay, what are the weight stats? And, do we need more CPU? Do we need more memory? Or is the SQL Server just waiting on something else, right? We need some load to do that. So I love this of suggesting, hey, one way we can make sure we're successful.
Have some milestones along the way where we go, let's look at the developer data set, which is 10 rows or whatever,
right?
And then let's look at a billion rows and try to decide can we guess what we need to support this?
Sure.
Right.
I mean, in my nightmare story, one of the things that I did do to try to resolve the situation was I went and looked at what they were doing, because I still had SA privileges, so. But I went and looked at what they were doing, and I could figure stuff out. And so I went and documented all the things that they were doing. I looked at the InHibernate tool that they were using, and I went and found best practices for InHibernate, and I put it all together in a document. And I said, like, look, you guys, this will work. What you're doing is right. What you're doing is good. But, again, yes, but. Here are some things that you need to avoid, and kind of detailed them out and said, when you hit this, you should do that, and don't do this because it's bad, and and just kind of laid out some stuff. Now, the thing is that that's what I would say to do here. That failed in that situation because we were still already, they had already decided that there was no way there was anything we could do to help.
Yeah, I think it might also give them indexes and just go, here's an index for this table. Just add it, right? Like, what does it cost you to add it?
Well, yeah. In fact, what I should have done is sneak a few primary keys in when they weren't looking, because they had the same thing, no primary keys.
So kind of translating this to a leadership level, maybe the way to say this is, hey, if we can take the time to do this testing, there may be some quick fixes that we can add that can save us money and
or
help
just
us
offer
meet
to
the
help,
deadline.
right? This kind of becomes, like Grant said, service. It's really volunteerism that you're saying, listen, I've got some extra time. I want to volunteer my effort to just make this better. Right? So it's not, whoa, you're going to make a mistake. It's just, listen, I want to just help. Let me contribute to this project.
No?
Nothing to add.
Is there something wrong with the pattern of trying to implement DevOps and doing cloud migration at the same time? Is there something inherently wrong with that, or can that be successful?
I think I think you can't separate those out because we don't have the luxury of time, right? Like time, I'm getting old, right? Grant's old like I am. Time is the most valuable resource I have. I mean, just as I get older, I realize it's not money, it's not other things. Time is so valuable. Yeah. And so implementing DevOps was really a cultural shift, as well as some technology and tools, but it's gonna take time. And a cloud migration is gonna take time. So ultimately, I don't really have time. I don't really have time, right? So I've got to do them together and hope I build some success with both of them along the way.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I cracked a joke about do all the hard things at once, but sometimes, you know what? The best way to do it is to do all the hard things at once. I mean, it's we've been running on 2005 or 2008. Now we have to get to not 14. Friends, don't let friends upgrade to 14. But we've got to go to 16 or 17. Or 19 by the time we get there. But that can become a very painful process. And you say, well, we've got to go through this really, really painful process, so we're not going to implement DevOps. We're not going to implement a new testing or new automation mechanism. Or it's like, no, this is a good time to do it because you're already going to be in pain. Rip that Band-Aid off, it'll be fine.
It's that thing about burn the boat that you rode in on.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Which is a really creepy analogy, I think. A really creepy analogy.
Yeah, there's implications there.
It's a creepy analogy. So,
I guess, maybe it would make sense to just look at what the actual things are that you're trying to do together, because sometimes, I know, get the Band-Aid off and get the pain over with, but sometimes there's just so much, and so many things can go wrong. And I've been in some of those projects too, where, we really bit off more than we could chew, and it would have been better to break it down into maybe smaller things where it made sense.
Scoping.
Yes, there you go.
And maybe find pilot teams that can go out and explore for you and develop patterns that they share with everyone else, and then take people with them. But that's part of scoping, really, is, okay, what should the pilot be and who should be on the pilot team?
So,
I like it.
That makes sense. All right. So now our winner. So this is interesting, and I have a feeling that a lot of you out there have probably been involved in similar situations. So in this case, there was a database that supported some app, and it was multi-terabyte, had everything going on, great high availability, it was replicated, lots of stuff going on with it, and it performed really well. It was very fine-tuned. So the objective that was handed off to a dev team was to create a process to import 100 million rows per hour. And, it's an import and merge. And, so the dev team decided that they really didn't want any advice from the data architect, even though the data architect offered some advice. No, we can do this. So the problem was that instead of using many of the techniques that are available, they were importing or, inserting one row at a time. It was a complete row by row, and we all know how painful that is. Obviously, it was not going to work. So I think from the way I read the entry, it sounded to me like they did discover this before they went live, because in their testing environment, they were completely pegging the CPU. Nothing was working when they were running this, and it was lots of blocking was going on.
And it was taking like some stupid amount of time, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it was just not possible. So then they finally decided to go ahead and talk to the data architect, and the data architect was able to, with I think a couple of people joined in, and they were able to get a sit-based approach. And the moral of the story, at least for this person, was, don't use a hammer. Not every project, not everything is a nail. So, but again, to me, it also makes sense. The developers are highly skilled in what they do. We cannot take their jobs, right?
Oh, I don't want to. I don't know about you guys, but
I used to be a developer 20 years ago. No idea how to be one today. But, where it's something like that, it would really make sense to go ahead and say, oh, who's the specialist? Who's the expert in this area? Maybe that's who should be giving advice or, developing this process. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, congratulations, winner.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well done, winner.
The row by agonizing row example.
Yeah.
And this was an example where they had come in and said, hey, this isn't going to work. And it got ignored. And so we've talked about this a little bit, the love of us saying no. So is it always yes, but, or is there a way of saying that's not going to work?
Well, yes, but is a way of saying that's not going to work.
I like this. We don't say no, we say yes, but.
Or maybe you could say, oh, this is really interesting, but I've got some other cool ways that I could do it in some other projects that I've worked on. Would you like for me to take a look at that, or you want to see what I did? Mm-hmm. Maybe, something like that. Just kind of like, just play dumb. Like, oh,
I'm a big believer in documentation, and I had another project that had a big failure. Not my fault at all.
Totally not Grant's fault.
Totally not my fault. In fact, I was the one going, this is never going to work. But the problem is that I knew it wasn't going to work, but I did not know why. And I did not know how it was going to fail. It failed, and I was right, but I didn't know the details of specifically how and why it was going to fail. And so if you know something is going to fail, you can't simply go, that's stupid, and walk away.
Right.
You can.
Well, you can, but you're not going to be successful, I promise. Or you might be. But you're not going to always be. Yeah. That was some of the early scary DBA stuff. But anyway, you have to be able to back up your statements, and it can't simply be that's stupid because I'm right. It's got to be, you've got to have some math, you've got to have some documentation and some proof. Like I've done some measurements. Here's the thing. Here's some best practices. Here's people showing why this is not going to work. Here's what's supposed to happen. And here's the measurements. And here's the numbers. Here's the math. Provide them the information they can use to make the decision.
Yeah. So in this system, in this example, they had something like 100,000 batch requests per second, or some super high transaction system. And I actually find folks coming to us at Redgate saying, we've got this system where performance is really important. It's very sensitive, and we want to deploy changes frequently in small batches during the day, but how do we, what are the techniques we should use to make sure that we are not going to mess this up? Do you have any tips for these sensitive systems? How do we avoid just having to wait for a downtime once a quarter in the middle of the night and releasing all this big batch of changes, which is probably going to go wrong too?
Well, there's no magic in DevOps, right? We're performing the steps in a repeatable, reliable fashion that you would do manually already.
Yep.
Okay, so understanding how high performance systems work, especially high concurrency systems, is important because we can't get around the rules and requirements of SQL Server or Oracle or Postgres or whatever I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
So I have to know that. In terms of relational databases, I think some of the things that have helped me over the past is that I have to be really careful about never combining additive and destructive changes in the same batch, and understanding that I want to do those separately. So what I really want to do is trade space for time as I'm making changes. So there's a lot of changes that can be made online in high concurrency systems, but I can't do really the complete change. I have to do some of it today and some of it tomorrow, or some of it in 3 weeks or whenever, because there are going to be a situation where I will need the downtime to do some crazy thing I'm doing, right? Or I'll have to, in essence, do almost like a log shipping thing within the system where I create a new table and I'm moving data over there, and then at some point I'll catch up enough to flip tables or whatever crazy requirement thing I have.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
A/B flags and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you can do to ensure that you're protecting the system. But it is all about ensuring that you've got a process in place that lets you validate things before you get to the production.
Okay, so I need to have expertise on my team to help design these changes, and I need a validation process.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, because if you're not validating it, if you're running scripts for the very first time in production, you're not doing DevOps. I mean,
you're doing something.
you're doing something.
Well, your production kind of is your dev environment then.
Well, you just rip your shirt off and yell, Leroy Jenkins, and go for it. What's the problem?
Well, there is no problem as long as whatever happens is okay, right?
Yeah.
There is no problem in that case. So I like this. So we have to have, it's not just that a tool is going to have all the expertise for us.
No.
And this is like DBAs worry, like DevOps means we're just going to have developers and not DBAs. Well, no, we need people to have this expertise.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
developers
knowledge, man.
have to know a lot of stuff already. Like, they don't have time to become an expert in every single database platform.
That's true.
So.
Nor do I.
So any thoughts for everything we've talked about? Any themes or thoughts from the entries or your own disasters? Perhaps that you just observed, perhaps that you caused. That occurred to you in the last minutes?
Well, I think the teamwork thing, right? Like you talked about it a little bit, I talked about it in my talk as well. I think Grant and Kathi have noted that in some of the entries here today, that working together becomes hugely important for us to be successful here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's ultimately, I think, one of the biggest things and the hardest things about going to a DevOps or even just changing the way in which we work.
Yeah.
Right.
This is great news for some people, maybe not great news for other people. There is an upskilling report. So I think it's the DevOps Institute that may publish the upskilling report that just came out. But it's all about what skills do people have who do DevOps, but also when hiring for DevOps, what skills do people look for? And social skills were found to be equally as important as technical skills in the hiring.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are great at collaborating, this is great news. You have a lot of hiring opportunities in the future. If you struggle with that, maybe something to work on, because just having, technical skills change, but this collaboration and the ability to build a great team, that is something that people are going to look for. It also means there was also stuff in there about how people want to hire from within their own organizations and teach people skills, because if you look around your own organization, you're going to notice who's really great at building teams and collaborating.
Right.
And those are the people you're going to want.
And since DevOps is so much about communication and so much about teamwork and so much about crossing the streams in an intelligent and helpful way, you've got to be, you can't be the scary DBA. You've got to be the friendly, happy pirate DBA.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like a rebranding of the scary DBA, really, right? It's like the scary DBA was like, "Aye, matey, let's be."
Yeah. Another thing too, I worked in a different career before, and at one particular job at a hospital, they were really big on customer service, and we had to learn customer service. They expected us to respect each other, and I learned so much from that job that has helped me in my IT career. And I look back at, before that was my last pharmacy job, and we should maybe be thinking about having that, expect people to provide customer service for people even in, not
Right.
just our customers that pay us money, but the other customers in IT.
Even
Yeah.
in our teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thanks to everyone who submitted your disasters. We're totally not going to tell folks about all those things you did. You're welcome. You're totally welcome. But thank you so much for submitting your disasters. We will be getting in touch with the winners for real in a non-anonymous fashion. Also, we are having SQL in the City summits in person in various cities. For example, Steve will be doing a tour of Australia and even New Zealand. You'll be able to see some of us in London, in Austin, in Los Angeles. I was like, there's another L on there. Lots of different places. And you can check it out. Go to redgate.com/SQL in the City Summit. Note the code on this slide. The code webinar gets you free registration. So use that code. And I hope that you join us there. We'll see you soon. Bye, folks.